quickly jumping back in here into the action once again with the ongoing series that we've been, kind of starting and going through really the last couple days, just already getting a jump start on the offseason already. And now shifting over from the NFC North and going over to the NFC East and starting to talk about the four teams in this division, we're starting with the Dallas Cowboys and their offseason needs in 2025, right? Under new head coach Brian Schottenheimer, he's got a lot of work to do, right? With his new role. And I think the best thing about this move that I will admit that's actually accurate is that because he's been here, because he's been part of this offense that struggled last year and he's seen all the injuries and things like that, I think the best part about promoting Brian Schottenheimer is his familiarity with all of that, right? He knows exactly what needs to be fixed, and he knows exactly what this team's biggest, flaws are and where they could get better. So I think that's kind of where, in just this sole situation, this very specific context, that promoting Brian Schottenheimer looks like a very logical move. But that's the only spot. But yeah, I mean, talking about this team that missed the playoffs this year, that was 7-10. They had a lot of injuries. They paid Dak a lot of money, which, we're not going to get into that. I think Dak deserves his money, just based on the market, right? You can't control that. But regardless of that, Dak got hurt this year. CeeDee was dealing with injuries. Micah got hurt. So it was a very, very disappointing and just very tough season overall for everybody there. And regardless of that now, trying to forget about that, right, you still have those players, right? You lock down CeeDee, you lock down Dak, and you're hoping to lock down Micah Parsons. But, those are only the cornerstones of this organization, right? They need to find the other guys, right? The supporting cast, and trying to build this thing up as quickly as possible. And I think the three main spots to look at could be wide receiver, running back, and defensive line especially. And starting off with wide receiver, I just think like CeeDee Lamb needs some help, right? Jamar Chase is phenomenal. Justin Jefferson is amazing. I'm trying to think of anybody else that fits into that category with those guys. I can't really think of anybody else. But those three guys are the ones that jump to my mind straight away. And even they have Jordan Addisons, right? They have TJ Hawkinsons, they have Taylor Nailers, they have T. Higgins, they have all these supporting pieces, Mike Gesicki, right? And in Dallas, I mean, not to discredit like Jalen Tolbert or not Dalton Schultz, I can't even remember his name. Jake Ferguson, right? Not to discredit those guys completely, but I feel like CeeDee, with how good he is, and we know that he's good for like 1,200 yards and double-digit touchdowns, healthy each and every season, right? Those are, close to his ceiling limits. That's still not enough to help you in this day and age with offenses, kind of running the show and having all this talent, all this modernization of these offenses, right? You're going to need more than just CeeDee Lamb trying to take over a game. So not only CeeDee, but Dak too. You just paid him a bunch of money. You got to help him out too, give him some options so he's not holding on to the ball so long, getting hit, dealing with another injury, or, causing pointless turnovers and things like that by just holding on to the ball too long or forcing it into some tight window throws. You can't have that, right? We kind of dealt with that this season. So trying to upgrade that position, I think, is going to be something of interest for them. And, we just got the news about Cooper Kupp. And, could that be an option? Probably not. I just got to mention it because obviously it's some of the biggest news, but I don't think they need to add someone making $20 million over the next 2 years to this team. They don't need that problem, honestly. So it's a good idea in just the surface of it, but adding that contract I don't think makes too much sense for them. So you look at other guys in free agency like a Chris Godwin potentially. I'm not even going to mention T. Higgins because, again, he's too expensive. Amari Cooper, a reunion there. I don't think it's the worst idea. Stephon Diggs also, but he's coming off of an injury, so do you really want to bring, someone in like that. He's a great receiver, but that might be a little bit too risky for some people, right? Those are the options in free agency, but you also still have the draft where it's a very, I think it's a very deep class in terms of wide receivers that I just feel like a lot of people don't know of, right? You have your Abukas, you have your Luther Burdens, you have the receiver from Arizona that I can't pronounce his name. Sorry about that, but you have those guys, but I think that's still even a little bit too rich at number 12. With how deep I think the class is, I think you could wait until the second round to get a guy. So you don't necessarily need to spend number 12 on a wide receiver. So if they could go out and get even like Amari Cooper or Stephon Diggs, I think that would be very good for them. Just to bring in an experienced guy that knows what he's doing, is a great professional, and can help him out right away, right? And then you could still, develop guys like Jalen Tolbert and things like that. But I think they definitely need to add to that group, because Brandon Cooks also wasn't too involved this year, and that's only one of the spots. So then you look again on the offense, and you look at running back with Rico Dowdle. He did record over 1,000 yards this year, but he is a free agent. So you can bring back Rico Dowdle. I wouldn't really have a problem with that. But I think you not only need to bring him back, that's fine, but you need to add somebody else on top of that as well. I think you need to just roll with two guys that are like two B plus guys, right? At least in some people's minds, right? I think Rico Dowdle can be a very solid running back, but I think to most, maybe he's not. I don't think he'll be like Derrick Henry, right? Or obviously like a Joe Mixon or Saquon, obviously. So if you're gonna have Rico, I still think it would help for this offense. If you don't really have too many options at wide receiver, get another running back in there, right? Because this market this year is not too much filled with running backs like last year, like Josh Jacobs and Derrick and Saquon, right? You don't really have that this year. So this year you can have guys on cheaper deals, maybe like an Aaron Jones. I think that would be an interesting fit there for him to complement Rico Dowdle. Wouldn't be such a bad idea. A guy like J.K. Dobbins, another guy that's probably on the cheaper side as well. Najee Harris is another one too. Like, you can add one of these three guys, and I think that would have you in a better situation than just rocking with Rico Dowdle, right? I think he can give you 1,000, like that's solid, but I think that's a stat where it doesn't show too much value. It doesn't really. I feel like rushing for 1,000 yards isn't so impressive anymore, because Najee's done it for like every year he's been in the NFL, but nobody talks about him like a top 5 running back, right? So I think that's a stat where people aren't just too impressed by it, and I think with Rico, I think wouldn't hurt them to add a guy like Aaron Jones or J.K. or Najee Harris in free agency, or even in all the mock drafts I've seen, Ashton Genty's been the pick at number 12, and I don't hate it, again, like the wide receivers, but, this is a very deep running back class, so I don't necessarily see the urgency to draft Ashton Genty that high. I know he's had a historical, once-in-a-generation type of career at Boise State, but I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of options at running back this year. A lot that, a lot of people just don't know about that could do an okay to pretty good job for you at the NFL. I don't think you need a running back at number 12, but again, I wouldn't hate it in that same breath, but I would opt to go with a guy later in the draft. That's just me. And then lastly, the defensive line. It was awful this year, right? The run defense was very it was to a level where I've really never seen it to, especially the beginning part of it, where it was like that was all everybody talked about, right? The run defense was just non-existent, right? And, it led to some pretty big defeats early on, right? To like the Saints, and the Ravens was also another one. So they got to fix that up. One of the main priorities that they should focus on, though, this offseason is re-signing a guy like Osa Odigizua, right, their defensive tackle. I've linked him to every team I think I've talked about so far in this series, right, because he's that good of a player, and the Cowboys should try everything to keep him in their building, because if he goes to anywhere like the Commanders or the Lions or I don't know who else did I mention, like the Chicago Bears and someone like that, right? They're gonna love to have him there. So the Cowboys can't really afford to let him go and just let him leave like that. Then you also have DeMarcus Lawrence, who's a free agent, but I don't think if we're to pick between Odigizua and DeMarcus Lawrence, I'm gonna go with Osa. That's just me because you can get guys still like we've mentioned before, like Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Khalil Mack, Puna Ford, potentially in free agency. I think you could make do without DeMarcus Lawrence, but I'm sure that they're going to try and re-sign him or at least throw him an offer. But I wouldn't be too upset if they lost him but kept Odigizua in the middle of their defense. And, talking about some of these names in the draft also could be something that they explore if they see a fit or if they see someone drop that's supposed to go early on. I don't hate that also in the draft, but it's going to take a couple of these guys, right? Because the way that everybody talked about the run defense and just based on what we saw as well, right? You're not just going to sign back Odigizua and bring in one guy like Hassan Reddick or something and just think that that's fine. They're going to need a couple of guys on this defensive line. A lot of bodies to throw in there for depth and just an improvement of quality that they need on that defensive line. It's not just going to be one. So, they do have good players on this defense. Like Overshown was a great find, someone that I really didn't know going into this season, and then each and every week he was standing out. So that's awesome for them to have. Micah obviously goes without saying. Trayvon Diggs, Deron Bland. They just need to lock up and shore up that defensive line a little bit more because they have some playmakers. They have been known to make pretty big game-altering plays, and they just couldn't really do that this year because they didn't get the opportunity because everyone was just running the ball right at them, like right down their face. So fixing that, I think, would allow them to get back to playing a style of defense that they're very comfortable in. So wide receiver, defensive line, and running back, to me, are the three places where they need to start. And hopefully, unlike last offseason, we can actually see them try and do something a bit more aggressive and not wait till the last minute. But that might be a little bit too hopeful, knowing the Cowboys. So we'll see. I mean, we got one more segment to get to on today's show. Going back to Media Week this week at the Super Bowl, Roger Goodell, we're going to react to some of the comments he made on the NFL expanding internationally and how that could lead to an expanded regular season, a international franchise potentially, and even an international Super Bowl at some point in the future. Roger Goodell mentioned all of that, and we're going to react to it when we return right after this.